Here we go. And we're live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We're here today on the BTS Creative Academy podcast, speaking to Pepper Ann, author. Hello, Pepper. Thank you
Hi
for
there.
joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and extending an invitation for me to be on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
That's great. I've seen a bit of your book. Your first time author.
Yes.
You wrote a book, your first book, The Notorious Texas Swindler. Is
hmm
that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. Sounds really interesting. Tell me a little bit about the book. What's the story?
Well, it's actually about a family member of mine who I had no idea that I was even related to this individual. But once I found out, I decided to write the story. He is a very well known cattle rustler here in Texas. And he escaped jail twice. And he is most known for that second jail escape. Um, when he and four other individuals escaped the local jail here in Texas, in Sherman, Texas. And he was involved in an 8-hour standoff with law enforcement, and he's lived the life of many men. Um,
So this is
he,
a true crime story,
it is, yes, it
a,
sure
a,
is.
real- a true life event that happened to a family member of yours. Is this someone that you were close to?
No, I had no idea who he was
Oh,
until I heard the story. And once I heard the story, I reached out to him and I said, I want to write this. But I tell you what made me decide to write the story was because I started researching. And the more research I did, the more I uncovered a lot of. Um, Crimes and other people who were involved in the crimes with him got away with. And so I wanted to expose those individuals because he's the only one that um, he got the rap for everyone, and I
mhm.
wanted to expose them, and they're still out and about today committing crimes.
And
So
so was the purpose of this book purely purely something that you set out to do to put something right, or was it a creative process? Was you looking to put the story out there?
I was looking to call these individuals out. Um, the purpose of it was to get the facts of the story out, where people, when they see his name, they will be able to know how the events played out. There are a lot of articles online about the jail escape, the Grayson County jail escape,
Mhm.
but there's nothing that details the crimes that he did beforehand. See, he and other individuals were involved in well, they were running drugs, and they were not the individuals he escaped jail with. The individuals prior to that, they were stealing cattle. They were running a party ranch, and his wife at the time was blackmailing people, catching them in uncompromising positions. And so I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to make sure everyone knew what all of these individuals were involved in. And it was just important to me to get the facts out, you know.
So you've not wrote any books prior to this. You've not got a history of being an author. Is that right?
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct.
So
I
it's
had
quite a
always,
big
uh,
leap, isn't it, to do that first book? It takes a lot of work. I think I read that this took you 12 years.
it took me 12 years. And the reason it did is because the individuals I exposed hacked into my computer and deleted my work 3 times.
Wow.
They deleted my work, and I had to rewrite it 3 times. And
Mhm.
then they were loosening the lug nuts on my family members' tires. There was a story there they didn't want anyone to know about. So that's why it took me so long. If I hadn't had to deal with that, I would have had it out a lot sooner.
So there was stuff going on in that. It wasn't just purely you got to write this book, you got to do some investigating. You're dealing with stuff going on in the real world. Someone wants to stop you telling this story.
Yes, yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, they were involved in crimes that they didn't want anyone to know about. The individuals that I exposed, they've moved on to working in other places. The uh, ex-wife of Bob, he's the one the story is about. She works, or she, last time I checked, she worked for a worldwide adoption agency. She was overseeing the financial parts of the company. And she was actually um, going to banks here in Texas and getting loans on cattle that they'd stolen. So she had some federal charges against her. They were
Interesting.
dropped. Yeah. So these people are out and about, and I wanted to make everyone aware of it.
Interesting. And so you put this into a book. Is there any fiction in the book at all, or is it a documentation of what happened?
Everything is it's factual. There, I did not change any names. My index is actually 20 pages long. So everything I wrote is it's all accurate. And I tell you, when I took this project on, because I've never written anything before, I wanted to make sure I had the right people in my corner. So I had a literary attorney from the very beginning. I had an editor from the beginning. And then at the end, I hired a PA, Laura, to help me. But I've had professionals around me the whole time. And I knew I was going to be exposing a lot of stuff, and I wanted it to be done the right way.
You wanted to do this correctly.
Hmm.
So what I want to understand is where this kind of all started for you, where you've got no background in writing, you've got this mission that you want to put forward, you want to get the truth out there. Where did have you ever done anything like this in the past? Have you ever dabbled in writing prior to this?
I had always kind of written a few things, but nothing that had been published before. I'd always
Hmm.
had an interest in writing, but I think my experience from this, where I got it to write this book, is that um, I worked with private investigators before I ever knew about this story. I was not a licensed PI, but I worked alongside of several that were the best in the business. So I kind of knew what to look for. And when something didn't seem right, it wasn't. And so I had a lead, and I took it and I ran with it. As far as writing, like I said, I've always had a passion for it, but this is honest to God, my first book I've ever published, anything I've ever written
And
for
that's such a
others to read.
that's such a it's so difficult to put a book together,
Yeah,
to document all the facts.
it is.
So what puts you in a position to tell this true life story? You touched on it a bit there about you've got this experience with private investigators, I
Mhm.
think. So yeah, what is it that gives you the credibility to share this story?
Well, I'm a family member. I'm a family member, and I'm telling the story that our family has wanted told for a long time. If I can back up just a little, it might explain
Of course,
some
yeah.
of um, so Bob got in trouble in the 80s with a DPS state trooper here in Texas, and it's an individual in law enforcement, and uh, he coursed Bob into rustling cattle, stealing cattle, and he couldn't get away from this individual in law enforcement, but he was making money, so I don't know that he really wanted to. But he was young, and once everything went down, they got caught. There were individuals who paid Bob's bonds from that, and those individuals that paid his bonds in the 80s are the individuals that I'm exposing. I interviewed family members who were there, who witnessed a lot of the events, friends of the family. I interviewed victims of the crimes. They wouldn't speak to anyone but me. And it may seem odd to people because they talked to me, the individual related, a person related to the individual who committed crimes and hurt them. But I went into this, I was very open and honest with people, individuals in law enforcement. I told them who I was, what I wanted to do, and everyone. everyone was just so wonderful with me. They were professional. Um, I am telling the story from all angles. I'm including the voices of the individuals who were involved. I even had individuals who were afraid of the people from the 80s, the individuals from the 80s who paid Bob's bonds. They stepped forward, they committed crimes with them. They stepped forward and they spoke with me, and
Mhm.
they gave me their version. So I had a lot of people coming forward to tell me, their version of the events.
Why do you think people trusted you with this story? Why do you think people would share so openly with you?
I don't know. I guess I just have that type of personality. When I speak with people, I'm very I try to be. I'm very professional. I try to be very compassionate towards people. I don't push them. If I only tell what they want me to tell, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. People just feel comfortable with me. I don't really have an answer for that. They just,
There's just something about you that's opening and welcoming to sharing
yeah.
and trustworthy, I guess.
I think so. It must be because, like I said, I had individuals who were coming forward to talk to me, and they committed some crimes as well, and they didn't want to talk to anyone else.
Mhm. Is
Um,
there, from their side of things, the people that shared these stories with you, is there a risk involved for them?
yes,
Hmm.
yes, and some of those individuals who did step forward, I didn't put their names. I was
It
protecting them.
protect them, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the risk to yourself then. So you've already mentioned how your computer's been hacked.
Hmm.
What has there been any other risks that you've endured in sharing this story?
Every time I go to an event, a book signing, or a program of such that, at a library, any type of event, anytime I go out of town, I'm always contacted by email from these individuals saying they want to meet and speak with me, which I don't.
Mhm.
I've had individuals just randomly show up at events, just just to be there, I guess, to make it known. I'm not afraid of them, but I will say this: my family has become targets to these people because of the story, and I I'm protective of my loved ones, my friends, and my family. If it weren't for them, if it weren't for my friends and my family, my story, this story would not be out there. So I had a lot of support. I had a lot of people who believed in me, a lot of people who, every time I had to rewrite this, I thought, I'm not going to do this. And I had a lot of people behind me saying, yes, you have a story. You have to tell it. People need to hear what really happened.
And how does that make you feel knowing that there's these people behind you? There's these people that are there looking after you whilst you're pursuing this journey?
You know, there's times when I tear up when I think about it. It makes me feel so wonderful to know that so many people love me and believe in me. I, you know, I guess I've thought about it different time many times, and I guess I'm the voice for a lot of people who might have been afraid to speak up or didn't know how. The victims, the individuals who were trying to get away from the crimes and couldn't. Um, Family, friends, everyone. I was that voice for them, and it was so important that the story get out. So it makes me feel good that they trust me enough to know that I could tell the story. And I don't know if you've seen the reviews online. I'm blown away at, every time someone reads it. Most of the, I tell them, leave only an honest review, and they do. And the reviews are amazing. People email me and they just tell me, that they had to read several sections of the book multiple times because they weren't sure if what they were reading is actually what they read. They were so blown away by the
Tell me a little
story.
bit more about the feedback that you've received for this book then. So would you say it's been overwhelmingly positive? Is that what you're saying to me?
Oh yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And for my very first book, I didn't expect that. I don't know what I thought. I thought I'm going to write the story and put it out there. That's why it was so important to have those professionals around me, so they would know what goes and what doesn't. And I just the response is overwhelming. Everyone is just amazing with me. I just, and I want to say this, it takes more than an author to tell a story. It does. In my case, my editor was amazing. He would come back and say, "Well, do you know more about this part of the story?" And I know the whole story, and in my draft, I would include it, and he would come back with notes saying, "How did you know all this?" I know because I asked questions, I researched. Um, the only reason that I have such a positive response from this book is because of the people who were around me and helped me, because I couldn't have done it on my own. There's no way.
What kind of advice was you given along the way from these other professionals? What kind of things were you told to keep doing as you progressed with this story? Because a long period of time that you kept going with this, and like you say, you can't do this alone. It's too big a feat. It's too big a task. You need people along the way to give you advice. And so, what type of advice did you receive along this journey?
Well, my attorney, my literary attorney, she had me. Uh, I had to give people forms to fill out so that I had their permission to do the interviews.
Mhm.
She was watching every step I took. If someone was overstepping with me, any of the individuals that I was exposing, she was right there guiding me the whole time. Anytime that I had to get records, from the courthouses or the sheriff's offices or anyone, she was right there advising me. My editor, he was just amazing. He would tell me, see if you can find this out, get this information. He was right there beside me. I got a lot of great advice, but I think the number one piece of advice I was given was to be careful and always let them know where I was at all times, because there was a lot of fear
Mhm.
in researching and writing this story. And I was researching this up until the very end. I kept finding out new information because I
Do
wanted to include what they were doing today, the individuals I exposed. So yeah.
Now that you've put this out there in the world,
Mhm.
then is there more information kind of coming forward? Is there another story to be told? Is there a follow-up to this book potentially?
I'm not going to write a follow up to this story unless a serious investigation is done. Um, I'm just not. So, as far as new information coming in, there's always new information about the people,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to write anything unless there's a serious investigation done on these individuals.
Do you think it has the power to make something like that happen? If this keeps growing traction, if people keep hearing about this story, that something could happen in the real world. My mind is taken back to when the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer came out and how big that was.
Mhm.
And once everyone had watched that show, there was a moment, wasn't there, where everyone went, we need to investigate this properly now.
Mhm.
We need to look we need to reassess this. We need to look at this. And then recently in the UK, we've recently had this thing with the post office. There's
Mhm.
been a scandal with the post office. I don't know if you know about it.
I don't know.
It's a big thing over here in the UK that the post office were sending people to jail, fining people massive fines for years and years and years and the people that were affected were struggling to get anything done through the courts. A documentary was made, a drama documentary was made,
Mhm.
and everything's coming out now. The truth is coming out 12 years later because the story is being shared with everyone.
Well, I hope that's what will happen. I believe that it is because I've uncovered a lot of things, a lot of crimes that people didn't know uh, these individuals were a part of. I've had, there were people who have left reviews, individuals who they've read the book and they've said, if someone wants to do a serious investigation, they can take this book and they can use it to do what they need to do as far as investigating. So I believe so. I didn't want to just tell a story. I wanted to make sure if I couldn't back anything up, I didn't want to put it in the book, and that was important to me. If I was going to share the story with everyone, I wanted to be able to find what was needed, so people didn't walk away questioning whether my information, what I had provided them, was correct. I wanted them to walk away and say, why did this happen? So it's important to me. Um, it was important to me to be able to back everything up because I wouldn't have written the book if I couldn't have. You know, it would have just been, this is what happened. You know, these individuals that I exposed, they tried to destroy a lot of evidence, and I just happened to stumble upon some things, and that's what I put in the book. So, you know what? If they can use my book, I'm all for it. I believe they can if someone wants to investigate it. Yeah.
Good. So take me back a bit. I want to understand a bit more as to why in this way did you want to share the story? Why as a book? If you started to find evidence that there was something wrong, that there was some crimes being committed, why don't you just hand that over to the authorities?
Because the individual at the very top of this
Hmm.
is idolized by a lot of people. So I thought putting it in a book and getting it out where a lot of eyes can see it,
Hmm.
maybe someone that does not idolize them will take it seriously. I didn't want it to be shut down if I provide the facts to uh, individuals who might really idolize this person, and that's why they've gotten away with this. It was important also to tell the real story because it was not out. There's like I said, there's a lot of articles that are written, but they made fun of the story. Let me give you an example. There is a magazine that talks about the Grayson County jail escape. And that's, like I said, that's when 5 of the inmates from the jail escaped and they were on the run for 4 days and law enforcement was trying to find them. And there was a statement in this article that compared them to Keystone cops. It said that they were Keystone cops. I interviewed these individuals and they were working nonstop. They took their job seriously. And I thought, this is not a laughing matter. This is not a joke. Somebody needs to tell the real story. And so once I started digging and I found everything out before the jail escape, I thought, yeah, let's let's dig in and see what we can do. I want the story, I want it to be taken seriously. It's serious what happened. It's not a laughing matter. There were people who were hurt, and their story deserves to be told. And I just wanted to tell it. I had reached out to Bob in the very beginning. I'd always wanted to write a book and I'd always wanted to publish a book, but I never had a story to tell, not until this came along. So it was important for me to be able to write the book because it was a dream of mine to write something. I just had no idea it was going to be this.
I think that's the thing with dreams. When when we get these ideas, we're not always sure how it's going to come into fruition. We don't always know the exact path. And sometimes I see these ideas as they're like seeds. We're going to grow a plant, but we don't know what the plant is going to look like. We
Mhm.
don't know if we're going to grow a rose or a fruit tree, or I'm coming up with random stuff now, but but we don't always know how the dream is going to unfold, do we? It's
No,
just sometimes we get the vision, we know what we're going to do, but we don't know how it's going to come to pass. But
that is.
what did you feel when you got that moment of, this is the story? How did you feel when you realized this is the thing that I'm going to share?
There were a lot of people who were going to depend on me to get the story right. I felt I felt honored that I was going to be able to tell a story that was so big that would make a difference in people's lives. I never expected this to be my story. This is something that you would expect a traditionally published author who's written books before to take on, but it was mine. My family member trusted me, and he wanted the story. He wanted the truth out there, you know. And so did the rest of my family. Once I started uncovering everything, everyone wanted it told. Like I said, there were so many people who believed in me. I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna write what? I thought there's no way I'm gonna expose these people unless I can back it up. And then everything started opening up.
So tell me a little bit about your process as a writer then, how you got these things to open up, how you got this story to move forward.
You know, I was afraid to reach out to people because I wasn't sure of the reaction I would get once they found out who I was related to. I thought, oh, here we go. In Texas, many years ago, it was we were known for our cattle, cowboys, ranchers, this, that, and the other. And if somebody had uh, somebody's cattle was missing, everybody wanted to know about it. They wanted to know, who is it? Who are they related to? What family did they come from? And that was kind of the story here many, many years ago. And once Texas started, a lot of people started moving to Texas and things started changing. And so people didn't know us as much as they did before. So um, once I felt comfortable enough to do this, I reached out to people. I think what was the first part of this whole process, like I said, was to get the people around me, to get my literary attorney and find out, can I really write this? Once I got the permission from her, I got my editor and I told him, here's what I have. We did a timeline. Um, we bounced ideas off of each other. And then I started reaching out to people and trying to interview them and get records. It was important to get those records because I wanted everything fact based. Here in the US, we have, so the FBI was involved in trying to find all of the inmates when they escaped the jail. And so I wanted their records. I wanted the FOIA records. So that took a little time to get. So the process was, at times it was overwhelming. It wasn't fast. It was a long drawn out process. And I had to get all those records, and I was interviewing while I was writing, and I was doing everything all at the same time, you know.
Hmm. And so what I'm hearing is that it's so important to have people around you, not to be
Mhm.
to not be completely alone in this endeavor. When you undertake something like this, it's important to have people in your corner backing you up.
Absolutely, because like I said, I'm exposing criminals who are still very much in play today. And
Mhm.
you don't know if they're at any time going to decide to walk on the right side of the law and say and question, what is this? What is that? So I wanted to make sure that I was protected. And so yeah, it was important to have these people in my corner. I mean, if you think about it, and this was something I'd considered, like I said, first time author telling this story. I didn't want anyone to question me, well, what is she doing? She's never written anything before. Prove it to us that you know what you're doing. And that's why it
Mhm.
was important to have everybody in line with me. Because if you get one thing wrong, everybody will jump on you. And so I
Of
wanted to make
course.
sure everything was right. Yeah.
Somehow going in with a sense of naivety into something like this may actually give you strength, may actually give you some power to move forward because you've got something to prove. You've got
Yes.
you want to do it properly, like you say, because you don't want people turning around and saying, "What a bad job you've done."
Yes, that's right. You know what? I do want to say this. When I took this on, I reached out to literary agents. Now I published this. I'm an indie author, and I published this on my own. Um, I reached out to literary agents, and a lot of them were amazing with me. Now, a lot of them, if they're not going to take the story, they don't have time to respond. They don't. They have so many submissions and things coming in. A lot of those agents took the time and they said, "This is an amazing story. I'm not going to be able to sell it because it is a regional story. Um, but you need to keep going with it and you need to find its place." So um, I had to keep going. I know that there's a lot of authors that some of them who are indie authors might be questioned. I know a lot of people may not take us as serious as they would a traditionally published author. And so it was important to me that when I did this, that I did everything correctly, because I didn't want anybody questioning
Mhm.
me or the book. And if they questioned it, I wanted it there. So yeah, I mean, that was my biggest concern. Um, you
Of
know,
course, when you're pursuing something like this, you're going to have internal dialogue going on. You're going to question yourself whether over a 12-year period. At some point, you're going to perhaps wonder, can you complete this?
well, yes. When I had to write it the last and final time, I had slammed my laptop down and I set it on the ottoman. I was working at a hospital gift shop part time. It was something just to kind of get me away from writing. And I said, "God, just don't, just don't. We're not doing this. I'm not doing it anymore." I got into that hospital gift shop, and there were three different individuals at different times within 20 minutes of each other. They all came in and said that they had a craving for a Coke. They had this urge to pray for someone, and they went into the gift shop instead of the cafeteria, and they just could not explain it. And I said, "Well, here's what happened." I feel like this was my story. I feel like I was supposed to do this because it kept coming to me. Um, After that happened, I went home and I thought, all right, let's quit whining. Let's figure out how to protect it and let's move forward. And I did. But like I said, every time I had to rewrite it, or if someone was, their lug nuts were loosened or something happened, I always said, "Let's quit. Let's stop." And my family said, "No, you keep going." So
What would you say to a first-time author? What would you say to an author that would maybe right now in a position like you were, of closing that laptop and saying, "No more, I can't move forward." What would you say to them?
I think every situation is different. I wouldn't want someone to do something that could seriously put them in danger. For me, I was able to continue. Some people, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel that it's worth it, I certainly wouldn't convince someone. Um, But if you have people around you, if you're safe and you're careful and you feel that it's your passion and you're supposed to do it, my advice would be to cautiously proceed, but make sure that you have the right people around you to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to. You know, if I hadn't had these people in my corner, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have, because, and maybe that's why the story has never been told until now,
Mhm.
because these individuals I exposed have bullied and retaliated against other people. They've gotten their way until I came along.
You touched on slightly previously there about also about like a higher power maybe driving you forward. Is there anything more you can say on that with the journey, with the process that you've been through? I know for myself, where I've started doing this, I've had lots of moments over the past year of moments of, shall I continue? Am I doing the right thing? And every time I ask that question, I'm pushed forward in the direction that I need to go. Something comes along that shows me something. If I'm struggling, it was a moment earlier this year I was struggling to find guests, and one morning I was like, I don't even know where to start. Just show me where I should start. And that day I got 3 emails from strangers saying I'd like to be on the podcast. Strange things have happened on this journey for me with the podcast. Were there any other moments that were unexplainable that made you continue this journey?
Oh, yes. The whole time. What do you want me to tell you? Because boy, could I. This whole thing is nothing but that.
Really?
So there were times when I didn't have access to records. I couldn't get them, and I said, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm going to make one more phone call. I'd made 10 before that, couldn't get anywhere. I made one more phone call, and the person I got on the phone said, I've got all this right here. Where can I send it? I went to Comanche County, which is where in Texas, where Bob got in trouble with the DPS state trooper. Um, he's still in that town, but I happened to sneak in there and get every record possible, which he didn't know was still there, I guess. And I left. I got out just in time. I had no idea the man was still roaming around in the town. It could have been dangerous for me. It was all perfect timing. There were instances when I think, well, this individual is working, because I was interviewing ranchers, and you have to be careful because they work from sun up to sundown, and you don't want to bother them, you know. And there were times when I think I don't want to call them because they're busy. And there was one instance where I picked the phone up, and Mr. Bob Davis, he's in the book, and he knew Bob very well. And he said, young lady, you caught me at the perfect time because I'm stranded. I've got a flat tire and I can't go anywhere. You couldn't have picked a better time to call me.
Mhm.
It was all timing, and it happened throughout the whole process of the book. Yeah. I noticed it's not in our timing though, which can be mind-boggling. You just want to pull your hair out.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that we've definitely not got any control over this, have we? We
No.
definitely don't have any say in how this perhaps unfolds. But I do think that we're given the opportunity to follow a path, that we're given nudges along the way, aren't we?
I absolutely agree. There were times when I would have to rewrite it, and I think I don't even know what I'm going to write. And all of a sudden it would just come to me. It would just come to me. It was like I was being guided. I was being led to
Mhm.
tell this. Um,
Do you have any idea where this is going to lead you next? Do you have any idea where do you hope this will take you? What's your next dream?
my next dream is to write another book. I to be honest with you, would really like to see this book get out everywhere. I want everybody to be able to read it that wants to read it. Um, I'd like to become a little more known for my writing, and I'd like to write more. I'd like to see where this takes me, you know? Um, I don't, like I said, I don't know. I would love to see a serious investigation done on this. I've done everything that I know to do to make
Mhm.
that happen by getting it out in front of people. So that would be my next big thing, would be to see that happen. Yeah.
And you touched on there about writing another book. Has anything started to come your way yet? Have you got an idea for that?
I do.
Mm.
Yes, I have a couple of other stories that I'm currently looking into, trying to research. Um, while I'm doing that, I'm actually working on a fiction crime series. It's called Penny Pearl Mysteries. So I'd like to put that out in between, each book that I do, each true crime. One of the stories that I'm looking at right now is something I'm going to co-author. I'd like to co-author with my mom. We've discussed it. It is I would be exposing some other individuals related to this person, but they are an upstanding individual, or they were murdered, and so I'd like to write the story, but we would write it as possibly a fiction based on actual events. But yes, I have a lot of stories. I have a lot more.
You have a lot
You
more
know,
to tell, a lot more to share.
I do.
And so where do you think the true crime and the fiction meets? Where have you found the path into the fiction?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out. So the series that I'm working on is based on actual events. So each story that I write about is an actual crime that happened. I'm
Mm.
just changing names and places. So there's always a touch of true crime in everything I write, if that makes sense. Even if it's fiction, it's all based off of an actual
Inspiration,
story.
you're taking inspiration from the real
Yes.
world
Yes, yes,
into this fiction, and
yes.
I guess you're dramatizing it.
Oh, yeah, yes, yes, I certainly am. I'm trying to. I didn't know when I decided to write something. Like I said, I always had a dream to write a book. I
Mhm.
had no idea that it was going to be in this genre, crime, true crime, fiction crime. I didn't know that. And once this fell into my lap, I thought, okay, here we go. Let's see what else I can come up with. So I always thought that I would write comedy. I love
Mm.
comedy.
Is there any reason why you won't write comedy in the future?
There's not, and I may. I very well may. I've done a few anthologies, and I've been included in some. And I wrote one that it's not out yet. I think it's called Cracked. It's by Indie Advocate, um, and I wrote that story as a comedy, and I had a lot of fun with it. So
So
yeah,
let's see. Let's see. We don't know what the future holds, do we? We know what you're working on at the moment,
that's
but
right.
as the path unfolds, maybe the comedy might see some light.
It could. It could. Yeah. Because like I said, I love writing and I love comedy. So we'll see what
And
happens. Yeah.
why next are you looking to do something with your mum? Why your mum?
Because it's a family story. It's a story that I'll tell you, when I was working on this story, the Notorious Texas Swindler, my family was right there. What'd you find out? What happened? Who's
Mhm.
involved? And so I thought, okay, this next one, I'm gonna let them be involved. I'm gonna let them be right there. And my mom is a perfect one to do this with. She's just amazing. Um,
Did those
I
questions questions that your family asked, did they help with the structure of the book? Did they help you discover anything?
No, they didn't necessarily help me with the structure of the book. They had a lot of questions. See, when we first heard about the story, we didn't have all the facts because nobody knew about the crimes that were committed with the individuals in the 80s that I exposed. And so once I started digging and uncovering and learning that, everyone said, "Well, what else happened? We need to know the story. We should have known the story, but no one knew it, you know." Bob is, I guess a lot of people consider him the black sheep of the family. And so they kind of stayed away a little bit. And I think that has a lot to do with why I and several of my other family members who were my age and younger didn't know anything about him,
Mm,
because he was into the life of crime and a lot of us were not, and so it was different. So once I started digging and everything, everyone jumped in and wanted to know. Um, I think what's important to consider when a family member writes a story about one of their own, they have their own questions. And sometimes our questions can go a lot deeper than general public. I would go in. Now, Bob is still alive. He's incarcerated. He's serving 14 life sentences for what they did was they charged him with escaping the jail and then all of the um, kidnapping and everything, all the crimes that were committed after the jailbreak. So they got him on 14 life sentences. So all the stuff prior to the jailbreak, none of it's gone to court, none of, no investigation. But I would go in to the prisons and where he was at, and I would tell him, "You knew better than to pull all this. Why did you do this? What were you thinking?" I got in there and I wanted answers. And I put that in the book. I told him, I said, if I'm going to tell the story, I don't want to just expose them. I'm going to expose you. And he knew that. Um, at the very end of the book, the second to last chapter, as I said, there was an 8-hour standoff with law enforcement. Bob and another inmate, they were holding a married couple hostage in their home. And Bob worked with the authorities and he got them out. And it was Vincent and Irma Forrester. And I became very close to them and their family. And Vincent would always say to me, "Don't be so hard on Bob. Don't be so hard on him." And I told him, I said, if I'm not, he's not going to know. He didn't have the rearing that the rest of us did. And I guess I felt that it was my place. It was my place to say what maybe hadn't been said before from a family angle,
mm.
from family.
It's
So
given you a real emotional connection to this story, hasn't it? Being
yeah,
being a family member. So let me just get this right. How distant a family member is this character?
my grandpa and Bob's grandpa were brothers, and Bob's dad and my mom were first cousins, and then that makes Bob and I cousins. Um, I didn't know about his side of the family because his grandpa wasn't around, and he didn't know about mine. You know, we knew about our great uncle Harold. He was both of our grandpa's half brother. Um, so
It,
he
it
was,
sounds to me like you've got a sense of responsibility for these events, even though you have nothing to do with what happened. It sounds to me like you've taken that responsibility. Is that right?
and maybe in a way, because like I said, these individuals were sharing their story with me, and I wanted to be very respectful. to them. I wanted to tell it in a very respectful way. They trusted me and they told me what happened. And so it was important for me to put that. Um, I don't know that it's necessarily my voice in the book. Maybe parts of it are, but it's the voices of the individuals who were involved in the story.
Mm.
Um, I don't know how other families are. I don't. I know how mine is. And I know that if someone in our family does something wrong, we're going to tell them. And I did. Um, yeah, this story is very personal to me. Uh, I didn't, there's so many feelings in this book. There's so many emotions in this book. And this was my story to tell. This was my story to tell.
So, a hypothetical question for you now. If
Mhm.
you could jump in a time machine and go back to that first day at the beginning of the book, at the very start where you decide this is what I'm going to do, what advice would you give to yourself at that moment?
I would tell myself to get ready because it's going to be quite a ride. To believe in myself a lot more than I did. Be patient, a little more understanding, and just know that it's going to get written, but it's not going to be on your time. When I took this on, I thought, and my family, they kept saying, "When's it going to be done? When's it going to be done?" You know, I'd give them a time, and it wasn't there. It it wasn't my
No,
time. Yeah.
but it's out there now. Time has moved on. We're 12 years from the beginning. So at this moment now, then now that we're 12 years from the beginning, it's out there in the world. What part of the process are you most proud of?
I'm most proud that I got all my research accurate, and I had a lot of people who were with me the whole time. The individuals in law enforcement, um, the victims, family, the individuals who were part of the crimes that wanted out, and they thought talking to me might somehow um, help in some way. That's what I'm most proud about. I'm proud that I was able to talk to people that didn't want to talk to anyone else. I was able to get their story. That's what I'm most proud about. Um, I have relationships with all those people. They're friends or family to me, and they always will be. The Foresters, the family. We talk. Um, we're constantly communicating. There's other individuals who had been victimized, and they reach out to me, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the way that I handled it because I wasn't sure. I didn't know. I didn't know the first thing about interviewing people other than what my attorney told me and a little bit of my editor. I'm proud of the way I handled everything. I think I did it professionally.
That's wonderful, and it sounds like you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful conversation, Pepper. I really look forward to reading the book. For anyone that is watching or listening, where can they find your book?
My book is available everywhere online where books are sold. It's available on Amazon. It's available in a lot of countries. I can't name them all. It's available. I don't know the countries that it's not available in. Let me just say that. My book in the US is available in most libraries also. It was important to me to get it in libraries. I didn't want someone to be able to read it, and it might not be the first on their list of things to spend money on. So I thought go to the library. You can check it out. So my website, if anyone would like a signed copy of my book, you can get that from me. It's in paperback, hardback, and ebook form. So it's
Wonderful.
not an Audible yet. I have some ideas for Audible, but I'm waiting a little bit before we get there. Yeah.
No rush. No rush, is there? You've done the book. The book is out there. It's out in the world, and we'll put links in the description below if anyone is interested to find out more.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing, Pepper. It's been really interesting talking to you and finding out about your journey with this true crime story. And if anyone has been watching or listening, we appreciate you for joining us for this conversation. Thanks again, Pepper.
Thank you.